Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 38, Tsarukyan versus Gamrot, also known as UFC Vegas 57. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Shillan, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well. As we're speaking right now, we just finished UFC Austin, and we talked a little bit about that one as, there was some good stuff on there. And it turned out fantastic. It was an absolute banger, one of the most enjoyable free cable cards I can remember. But we also talked about it as a bit of a, there's the feeling of a hangover after a big pay-per-view. This one, to me, there's the hangover, and then there's also the don't spoil your dinner feeling, like when the basket of bread or the chips and salsa come to your table, and your parents are like, don't fill up on bread.
Yeah.
This is like the don't fill up on bread card, because another week from this, of course, we have UFC 276 that has two huge title fights at the top, and looking to be one of the UFC's biggest cards of the year. It's, always around International Fight Week and the 4th of July weekend. Tell me, man, what's your level of anticipation for this card? Is this just another card, or do you see like sneaky amounts of good stuff on it?
I think it's competitive matchmaking. That's the thing that kind of really stands out to me. So I think I said this week that I play in a, like, I know you'd call it like an eliminator survivor type pool where we have to pick one guy to win to move on to the next week. And there was one fight that really stood out to me. Like all the rest, usually every week I have 3 or 4. I'm like, this guy, he's going to win this guy. There was one, I'm like, I'm super confident in this one. And the rest of the card, I'm like, man, it's pretty evenly matched fights. So that's the thing, what stands out to me. And the main event obviously stands out to me. What stands out to me, I'm surprised these guys have the main event, being that they, Tsarukyan and Gamrot, they're not huge names in the sport. But I'm so happy that it is the main event, because this fight is as good as any fight that can be made right now. I think the talent is off the charts for both of these guys. I'm glad that if you're going to match these guys up, don't cheap us by giving us 3 rounds. Like, I'm glad we're getting 5 rounds of these guys. Like last week, we just had 2 other guys that are really off the charts talent, but not names, in Ismagulov and Kutulidze. Like, when I talk about not names, I know I say the guy's name wrong. I know I say Kutulidze's name wrong. But I still felt like we got cheated a little bit. The fight was so unbelievable. It was so technically sound. It was so much fun. And then we still didn't get those last 2 rounds. At least this fight, if it goes goes into the championship rounds, we didn't get cheated. We're not going to be disappointed at the end of the 3rd round. I love the main event. I'm super, super excited to talk about the main event.
Yeah, same here. That's the obvious attraction. And just like you, I am glad that it's the main event. We were talking about Ismagulov versus Kutulidze last week, and saying this is about as quiet a fight as you can get in terms of name recognition between 2 guys that they both might be top 5 talents. We might look back on that fight 2 years from now when they're 2 of like the top 3 guys circling around the title and not be surprised at all. And these are 2 more guys that fall right into that same category.
Absolutely.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, you know what it might be? It might be Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards, 1.
Yeah, it definitely could be.
Like 2 really good guys who fought earlier than probably we expected.
Yeah, but in the case of those 2, I don't think it'll be 7 years before, like, one of them's the champ. But
I think one of these guys could be champion 18 months from now or something. But yeah, I was just trying to think of that was like, obviously that fight just got booked, so it's kind of in my head. But I'm sure there's other examples where we had 2 guys get booked on their way up to face each other.
On this one, the only other thing I noticed, and it's one of those things that I use to take the temperature of fight night cards, how many of these people are probably going to get cut if they lose? There are a couple people that have kind of got their backs up against the wall here. But yeah, there are also some pretty solid prospects who just, they'll be looking to turn things around. And, the UFC is always going to have dozens and dozens and dozens of those. And, if we get some of just those little storylines coming into these, that's enough to keep my attention for a Saturday night for sure. Unless you got any other thoughts about this, let's go ahead and dig right into those prelims.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we kick things off, or at least as the card is structured as of the beginning of fight week, this is scheduled to kick things off, a strawweight matchup between Vanessa Demopoulos and Jinh Frey. Demopoulos, the 33-year-old Colorado native, is 7-4 overall. She is 1-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran, though not a winner, on Dana White's Contender Series and a former LFA strawweight champ. Since she's been in the UFC, she has lost a unanimous decision to J.J. Aldrich, come back from that this past January with a first-round submission of Silvana Gomez Juarez. She'll be taking on Frey. The 37-year-old Texan is 11-6 overall. She is 2-2 since joining the UFC as a former Invicta atomweight champ and a former Ryzen super atomweight title challenger. She lost 2 straight to open her UFC career against Kay Hansen and Loma Lookboonmee. Since then, has won back-to-back fights over Gloria DePaula and Ashley Yoder, both of those by unanimous decision. Odds here favor Frey pretty strongly. She's minus 250. Demopoulos plus 210 on the comeback. Keith, I'm going to kick this to you first, but just like as kind of a conversation opener, both of these women feel undersized for the UFC strawweight division to me. Frey obviously used to be an actual atomweight. Demopoulos seems tiny, and she seems tiny in the same way Frey does, where she is built, but just very short. I mean, the Fight Finder has her listed at 5'6". I call bullshit on that. She's going to stand across from Frey, who is 5'2", and I bet they're going to be right nose to nose.
Okay.
Let me know who you think wins this fight, and let me know if you think size kind of defines these women's ceiling in the division, no pun intended.
Maybe when they measure, they did it with like the stripper high heels.
Some big old clear heels on.
I said to myself when I was taking notes for this fight, I said, you know what? She's no longer a stripper. I'm not going to make any jokes about being a stripper. And I made it like the first thing I said on the show was a joke about being a stripper. I love that Demopoulos is no longer a stripper. And I just think like when Demopoulos told her parents, like when most fighters, female fighters tell their parents they're going to become fighters, like there's so many stories about, oh, my parents didn't like it. My mom was scared. And I just picture like one parent fight with the other one and be like, yeah, we don't want them to be a fighter, but at least they're not a stripper. Like, that's a good thing. Like the Demopoulos family is like the only family that's the complete opposite. Like when I heard her do an interview and she said, I don't know why I'm picking on her, but when she says that she's a stripper and then her entire family's in the stripping business and her dad's the DJ when she dances, like that's just fucked up. I'm sorry. Back to this fight though. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm sure the listeners will have some fun, and I will apologize if I am wrong about that. Maybe I'm misremembering, and if it is, I will gladly apologize to the Demopoulos family. Jinh Frey at this point of her career, I kind of think we know she's been around. Seems like forever. Obviously in the Invicta scene, fighting overseas. She's a southpaw with low output, but kind of technically sound counter striker. She's really good at picking up her opponent's timing. You mentioned that she is undersized, but despite being undersized division, she actually likes to get in the clinch and kind of grind in there. And surprisingly, like I always point this out because it's fairly recent memories when she beat up Loma Lookboonmee in the clinch, which was really surprising to me. I do like that suddenly now she's wrestling more than she has in the past, which is really good. She'll just kind of just drop down in a single and run the pipe. I'd say she has okay entries, but a pretty good top game, which we saw against Gloria DePaula. She looks to pass to better position. She has good takedown defense, and the one struggle she has in the grappling is because she's undersized. We've seen her kind of get held down. Demopoulos, she's not a strong striker. She's very limited. She does some things right on the feet. Like she keeps her head, her chin tucked. She has a high guard. She kind of keeps everything tight inside, which I like. She throws a lot of right hands, but she lacks punches power because she pulls her punches. Like we've talked about this in the past. But that might change because her last fight, she hurt Silvana Gomez Juarez before subbing her. That might be a little bit of what we kind of talk about Rodolfo Vieira later, where people are so focused on your grappling. They're not expecting the strikes coming. The one thing about her though, she's a tough like son of a bitch. Like she can take a beating and just keep moving forward. She's like Rocky in that sense. She's like Rocky if Rocky was a stripper too. Like if you had that, like you added that to it. She wants to get the fight to the ground. She isn't a very strong wrestler. She will shoot from really, really far away, and will pull guard. She'll just like kind of close the distance to get you down. She'll do Imanari rolls. But she's really good on the ground. She's a 5-time world champion. She's got great flexibility, some slick back takes, good arm bars, subs really everywhere. And then I always bring this up because it's such a slick submission. Go back to like that inverted triangle she hit on Sam Hughes. So as far as prediction goes, I think Demopoulos is bigger than you think. I think she will have a size advantage on Frey. She could catch Frey in a submission, but Frey is probably the more technically sound fighter. I see her kind of stick and moving, kind of point kickboxing game, winning a few of the clinch battles and winning a close decision. So give me Frey by decision, but I have no confidence in this fight.
Honestly, I see it playing out the same way you do. My thought was that Frey does a low output kickboxing game on her way to winning 2 out of 3 rounds against Demopoulos, and Demopoulos struggles to bring it to the ground. Frey knows better than to let it go there. I feel as though Frey's couple of camps that she spent at Fortis have really kind of they've helped her in terms of game planning and in-cage adjustments, but they haven't changed the basic fighter that she is, and she is a bit of a scream at the TV fighter. Even during her run as Invicta champ, where she was one of the top 3 atomweights in the world on paper. Like, you just find yourself screaming at the TV. Like, those 2 fights with Mina Grisander were just 10 rounds of agony because it was 2 fighters waiting for the other to go.
Yeah.
And while she won both.
I thought she lost both of them. I scored in both of them.
And it's perfectly justifiable to think that, because her style doesn't lend itself to definitively winning rounds. She doesn't throw a lot of volume, and because they were atomweights, nobody really has a ton of power. So it's up to really little nuances for you to decide who won a round.
I think I gave, sorry to interrupt you, I think I gave one of the Ashley, I think she fought Ashley Cummings twice, right?
Yeah, the second time she missed weight, and so she vacated her title.
Okay, I think I gave Cummings that fight too. Like, I'm like, man, Frey, I always think she loses, but she wins.
And with Cummins, it was perfect because Cummins isn't going to wait for anybody. She would come forward and force action out of Frey, which made them better fights. But yeah, man, you look at Frey, and she's got this murderous scowl. She is absolutely ripped. She is
the best abs in the game.
Yeah, she's way up there on the list of fighters where there's the biggest disparity between how much ass it looks like they're going to kick and how much they actually kick once they get in the cage. She's up there with like Lyman Good and Shek Congo. Oh, this person is going to rip the other person's head off, and then it's just kind of a slow-paced kickboxing battle with a lot of clinching against the fence.
She's the only female that can make Tisha Torres out of shape.
Yeah, it's like
she's that ripped.
Come on, Tisha, eat a salad sometime. Oh man, but I'm with you, and I might be wrong. If you're right about the Demopoulos having a little bit more size on Frey than I'm giving her credit for, and she is able to force things to the ground, this pick could change. But I think Frey's takedown defense is going to hold up. Frey's going to get the better of things on the feet. There'll be individually hard rounds to score. Probably kind of hard to watch, but give me Frey to win 2 out of 3 of them.
I'm sorry. Who's the favorite?
Frey's a big favorite. She's minus 250.
Oh, no way. She shouldn't be that big. Right. Yeah.
Well, even if I think Frey's that much better a fighter, I don't trust her ability to win rounds in the eyes of judges that definitively.
I don't think she should be.
Next up, we head to the bantamweight division for a matchup between Brian Kelleher and Mario Bautista. Kelleher, the 35-year-old from Long Island, is 24-13 overall. He is 8-6 in the UFC, though he has bounced back and forth between bantamweight and featherweight over that time. So he's 8-6 in the UFC. He's 5-3 at bantamweight. He did fight at featherweight last time out. It was against Umar Nurmagomedov, who appears higher up on this card and is also a habitual bantamweight. It did not turn out well for Kelleher as he got choked out late in the first round, which snapped a 2-fight win streak for him. He'll be looking to get things back on track against Bautista. The 28-year-old Arizona native is 9-2 overall. He's 3-2 since joining the UFC as a former standout at Combate Americas. He won his last time out. It was a unanimous decision win over Jay Perrin at UFC Fight Night Walker versus Hill back in February. Odds are fairly close on this one, but Bautista is a moderate favorite. He's minus 155 right now. Kelleher plus 130. Keith, Brian Kelleher, he's always there. He's one of those guys that he's the kind of guy that if this were 15 years ago, we'd be talking about him like Clay Guida, or if it was 10 years ago, we'd be talking about him like Neil Magny, who appears higher up on this card. But to be an action fighter who just fights, it feels like month in and month out, it's harder to stand out in an era where there's 40, 42, 43 events a year. But Brian Kelleher, he's always there. How does he do this time?
Brian Kelleher, he's just an interesting guy. Like I never have got a really good grasp at him because he doesn't do anything where like just jumps off the charts and be like, wow, this is really good. But then he just finds ways to win. He's just a solid veteran that is more technically sound than he is explosive. He's fairly well-rounded. He uses pressure well. He's a counter striker. He has high volume, a very boxing style, uses feints well to draw out attacks. Surprising power. He doesn't get enough credit for the power he has. He doesn't check a lot of leg kicks, which I don't like. Very boxing style to him. He isn't a strong, technically sound wrestler, but he has good enough like timing on his takedowns to get the fight to the ground. He's also very committed to get the fight to the ground. Like he's that guy. He kind of knows what he needs to do to win, and it gets there. The one thing I hate about him, but it keeps working for him, is he defends takedowns by jumping on guillotines. But he has a really, really good guillotine, and it's worked out for him a lot. He's the ultimate guy that's going to put himself in a position to win a fight, even when he's outmatched skilled. Like he'll give himself the best opportunity possible. Now, Mario Bautista, he's a crafty striker with good footwork. He uses footwork to keep his range. Good at getting all the way in, landing shots, and getting out before we get hit, kind of like in and out style. Cuts angles well, sidesteps when attacking. He uses feints well to set up his long strikes. He lacks power. He's not a big cracker. He's been hurt specifically to the body in the past. But some things I do like, and I insert this for any guy who does this. But when pressing, I love that he throws step-in knees. He also likes to do flying knees too, but he loves those step-in knees to the body. He's a strong clinch fighter, weak offensive wrestler, but he did show some improved takedown defense going back to the Miles Johns fight. And if taken down, he's active enough to get back up. As far as prediction, I think the odds are off again. Like I think this should be a even closer fight. I mean, I guess it's a fairly close. Like one's negative 150, like Batista's negative 150. I think it should be pretty much a pick 'em, but that's fairly close. I am taking Bautista. I'm just taking because I think he's a better athlete. I think he's slightly faster, but I think we have a war. I think this is going to be a back and forth war. I'm going to take Bautista by decision, but again, no confidence in this prediction.
I feel the same way you are, to the point that I've been leaning Kelleher ever since I really started thinking hard about this fight. The one thing that gives me pause is if Kelleher like shoots a sloppy takedown to get this thing to the ground and runs right into a flying knee or something like that. Just Bautista, he's a lot quicker and more explosive than Kelleher is. He's younger. If Kelleher can force the fight he wants. Well, it doesn't have a nose ring. If Kelleher, and I hate to use the old UFC cliche, impose my will, but if Kelleher can make this into a Brian Kelleher fight, I do like him to just kind of win a grimy, hard-nosed battle. But I won't be comfortable with it until the final horn sounds, because I will be worried about, even though Bautista, I mean, he's not the kind of guy that flattens you with one punch. Since he started throwing flying knees, it makes you think of the Miles Johns fight. Like, Miles Johns is probably the best win in the UFC that either of these guys has. And it was Bautista taking out a good wrestler and a much more explosive guy than himself just by timing him perfectly with a flying knee. I could see Kelleher walking into one of those. I'm picking against that, though. Give me Brian Kelleher in the slight upset here by decision. We head now to the men's flyweight division for a matchup between JP Buys and Cody Durden. Buys, the 26-year-old South African, is 9-4 overall. He is 0-2 since joining the UFC out of the 2020 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He has lost to Bruno Silva, who knocked him out last March, and then more recently, Montel Jackson, to whom he lost a unanimous decision last September at UFC Fight Night Smith versus Spann. Obviously, been a rough year for Buys, taking all kinds of L's in and out of the cage. He will attempt to get things back on track against Durden. The 31-year-old Atlanta native is 12-4-1 overall. He is 1-2-1 in the UFC. He lost his most recent outing. It was a guillotine choke submission by Muhammad Mokaev in under a minute at UFC Fight Night Volkov versus Aspinall back in March. That blunted the momentum of his lone UFC win so far, which was over Aoriqi Lang last November. Odds on this one extremely close, almost to pick him on some books, but Buys is the slightest of favorites right now. He's around minus 120 on most of the books. Durden is available at even money, plus 100 on a couple of books right now. Keith, JP Buys, favored to salvage at least something out of this most disastrous of years.
Jeez. Yeah.
Who you got in this one?
Yeah, this is a tough one. It really is. They match up, stylistically pretty tough against each other. Neither guy is huge UFC talents, kind of bottom of the barrel. Both guys are probably fighting for their jobs. Durden's been in the news for controversial comments. JP Buys has been in the news for some also controversial comments he's made.
He could be forgiven for making some controversial comments.
Durden is a wild fighter. He's fun to watch. Like, say what you want about him. You can hate him. He gives you plenty of reason to hate him, but he's fun. Like, he's fun and he's a pressure action guy who throws lots of looping power shots. He throws hard leg kicks, hard body kicks. He checks kicks. He looks to wrestle, but I think his wrestling is extremely overrated. Now, he looked really good against Chris Gutierrez, took him down, held him down, which is really good. He's got some good top control, some strong ground and pound. But then other times he's really struggled to get guys to the ground. So I'm also worried about his submission defense as he's been subbed. He's got 4 losses. He's been subbed in 3 of them. So that's very concerning for a guy who wants to get to the ground now. JB Buys, on the other hand, he's a wrestle boxer. On the feet, he's a pocket boxer, likes to throw hard inside shots, good pop in his shots. He kind of has a sneaky high kick, but he hangs his hands too low, relies on his head movement, kind of keeps his chin high. His chin has been checked. I mean, he was plunked by Bruno Silva. He was in his last fight, he was blasted over and over again by Montel Jackson. He doesn't check leg kicks. But he's an elite wrestler. He's an elite wrestler in credentials, I should say. I mean, he's competed on the international scene. When we've seen him at his best, great entries, fun in scrambles. But what surprised me is that he's been taken down by less credentialed wrestlers. Like Cody Durden, if he takes down JP Buys, I wouldn't be surprised by that. Even though one was like Georgia high school wrestler, the other one was like wrestling on the high-level international scene. But going back to Buys, good top control, good ground and pound. Cardio has been a bit of an issue. He has gassed out in the past, which I don't like. As far as predictions go, stylistically, I think Buys should win. I mean, Durden likes to wrestle, and as I mentioned, Buys is a way more decorated wrestler. However, Buys has greatly underperformed, kind of fought down to his competition. And we kind of alluded to it. He has a lot of serious personal shit going on with him right now, which we can't get in his head. We have no idea what's going on, but I've never picked based on stuff going on outside the cage. Like, that's not really my thing. I like to try to analyze the X's and O's between these guys. So I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to go with Buys to win a grappling match and to get a decision. But this is the 3rd fight in a row I'm saying this. I have zero confidence in my pick, but give me Buys by decision.
Yeah, I'm with you on the analysis. The first thing I remember about Bays, and I should have mentioned off the top that he's a 2-time veteran of the Contender Series. You know, he lost his first time around on the very first season of the Contender Series when, I mean, to be fair to him, he was like 21 and had 3 pro fights or something, but and then won his second time around. But how non-dominant he was as a wrestler, and you know, those credentials don't come across just wholesale. You know, like you can be the kind of freestyle wrestler that you get really, really good at a bunch of skills that don't translate well to MMA, that are just meaningless to MMA. And then you can be kind of a middling wrestler who picks up skill sets that just work perfectly.
That's right. Like imagine your magic game is built around tilts.
Well, yeah, and it's funny, you know, I go back to my like 4 interview series with Logan Storley. He specifically said that he's like if you're one of the best people in the world at tilts and turns, like, yeah. but I learned how to wrestle against matted walls. Like I'm gonna be a better MMA wrestler than you are.
Like Spencer Lee is pound for pound probably the best wrestler in the NCAA's right now, and his big time of his game is the tilt series. Maybe I'm not saying Spencer Lee wouldn't be a great MMA fighter, but
right.
Things are different.
Yeah, absolutely. And same with the out of cage drama. I mean, this past week we just saw Adrian Yanez win his 5th UFC fight in a row. If anyone had an excuse to like have their mind not in the game because of stuff happening outside the cage, like as his coach died in the middle of his run, he would have. So I'm with you
like,
there.
What was it, like a week before or something like that? Before he was fighting Davey Grant, something crazy. I know it was like Mano Martinez. It was like the week of his debut.
Yeah, it was like right when Martinez debuted. So my concern is that Bays is going to try to wrestle, and he's going to find himself against the guy that, while not as credentialed, is as good a functional MMA wrestler and is actually kind of like bigger and stronger than him. I think Bays is gonna run into problems here. Durden is a wild fighter, and that, you know, you sound like a guy who would not put money on any of these fights that we've discussed so far. Just too many unpredictable factors. But I would certainly shy away from this one, even as I am leaning towards Durden here. But yeah, give me Durden to probably win some exciting exchanges on the feet. I'm interested to see what happens the first time Bays goes for a takedown. If he even does, like he may even just choose to test his luck on the feet for as long as it goes. I think this will be a fun fight. I think both these guys are fighting for their jobs. In the case of Bays, I think that's going to make him turn to what he sees as his safe place, which is wrestling. I don't think it's going to affect Durden at all. Like, say what you want about the guy, he doesn't give many fucks. Like, I have the feeling he's going to come out wild, but I do still favor him in this one to hold on to his UFC job for better or worse. And if he says something about sending Bays back to South Africa, God help us all. Bantamweights are up next, as it is Raulian Paiva meeting Sergey Morozov. Paiva, the 26-year-old Brazilian, is 21-4 overall. He's 3-3 since joining the UFC out of the very first season of Dana White's Contender Series. He lost his first 2 fights in the UFC, although those losses to Kai Kara France and Rogerio Bontorin have certainly aged well. He since then he got 3 straight wins over Mark De La Rosa, Jalga Shumagulov, and Kyler Phillips. The last of those involved him moving up from flyweight to bantamweight. His second outing at bantamweight did not go quite as well, as he met Sean O'Malley last December at UFC 269 and got put on the rainbow-haired man's highlight reel with a late first-round knockout. He will look to get things back on track against Morozov. The 33-year-old from Kazakhstan is 17-5 overall. He is 1-2 since joining the UFC as an M1 standout. He has lost to Umar Nurmagomedov, who appears further up this card, beaten Khalid Taha, and most recently got choked all the way out by Douglas Silva de Andrade at UFC 271 in February. This is yet another fight on to open up the UFC Vegas 57 card that is close on the books. Morozov minus 140 right now, Paiva plus 120 on the comeback. Keith, feel as though both these guys are probably better than their UFC records look. I mean, Paiva is 500 in the UFC, Morozov under 500, but they've been fighting really good people, and in a lot of cases, they've been pretty competitive against them. How do you see this one going, and who do you like?
Yeah, they could have split these guys up a little bit, been a little nice to these guys. It's a fantastic fight. It really is. Really, really tough fight to pick. I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm gonna say it again. Like, I'm gonna have no confidence in my predictions, and that's probably gonna be a theme, because that's one thing I was talking about during the intro is how evenly matched this card is, pretty much from top to bottom. Paiva is a guy that I've always really liked. I've really thought he was much better than his like name value he has. He's a good striker with good output. He's long and lengthy. He really presses the action. He keeps his hands low, but has good head movement to set up his shots. Crisp jab, straight punches down the pipe, which I really like. His straight right is really good. I like that he goes to the body. He goes to the legs with kicks. Underrated in the clinch. I like that he will mix in some takedowns, so he's not just one-dimensional. But the biggest weakness he has is his defensive wrestling. Go back to like the Kyler Phillips fight. He got taken down 4 times in that fight. Morozov,
by a guy who generally wants to strike. Yeah.
No, but I mean, there's a reason why he turned Phillips into a wrestler, because he was surprisingly having a lot more success than I think pretty much anybody was expecting on the feet. Morozov, he's 1-2 in the UFC, and you mentioned it. Like, I think he's much better than that record. Now, obviously, the Nurmagomedov fight, it is what it is. I think the Dion Draws loss was a fluke. I really think if they fought again, Morozov wins that fight. I think because I think he's good. Like, when I watch his skills, he's a very good athlete. Good on the feet, in the ground. He's a very fluid striker, good footwork, fast hands, got some sting in his shots. I love that he throws combination, then adds kicks into his combo, which is something not enough strikers do. A lot of guys either like kickbox or they box. They don't kind of put it together. He's got really good kicks too. I like that he mixes in takedown attempts in his striking. Like, he'll throw a combination and then end with an entry. He does need to improve his ground control, but he's got good ground and pound when he has his opponent pinned, and he's got 3 submission wins. So as far as the prediction, I really like this fight. Like, this is one of the ones that jump out to me. If, like, sometimes I kind of have an idea of like what you're going to ask when we preview it. I thought you were going to say, hey, give me like a undercard fight that you're really looking forward to. This was one I was going to say. I'm high in both guys. I expect a war. I expect both guys to have their moments. I am going. See, even when I'm talking, I'm flipping. Man, and I know whichever guy I'm going to pick, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go Morozov simply because I think he has the wrestling advantage. Plus, Paiva was clunked in his last fight, so I'm always a little wary of taking a guy who just got knocked out, because we've seen it before. Like, guys get knocked out and they never really recover. But I think this is good. I'm so close. I'm going to go with another split decision. I'm going to take Morozov by split decision with 0 confidence again.
I can definitely feel that. Things I definitely know about these two guys. I'm glad that Raulian Paiva has decided to settle in at bantamweight. I mean, he was huge, like, early in his run, and I'm not sure that it was the best thing for him to try to keep making flyweight, even as he won a couple of fights there. But as he's moving in, because he's still just 25 or 26, it was gonna keep getting harder anyway, and he's growing into his body, like probably growing into his power. Even in those divisions, he's really just entering his physical prime now. I'm glad he has made the choice to apparently stick at bantamweight, even if last time out against Sean O'Malley it didn't work out great for him. But hey, you know what? You and I both agree that Sean O'Malley is a next level striker. Like, when he's on, he's a guy that makes good strikers look ordinary.
Yeah, I'm all in on O'Malley.
Here, I kind of wonder, if Morozov is gonna look at takedowns as the best route to victory against Paiva, and if he does, how that's gonna go. But even though he's the slight underdog here, I'm leaning towards Paiva. I want to kind of discard the loss to O'Malley as, the better fighter won and made it look easy, but that's not a thing that many people in the division are going to be able to duplicate. Give me Paiva to win this one by decision and get the best of things on the feet. Probably sting Morozov with some of his nice long straight punches. Hopefully keep him at bay, not get taken down, and win 2 out of 3 rounds in a really fun fight. We head now to the featherweight division for a matchup between Shayilan and TJ Brown. Shayilan, who at various times has gone by Yilan Shah or Nuerdanbieke Shayilan. The UFC is going to call him Shayilan because that's the Mongolian naming convention, and so shall we because it's easier. Shayilan, the 28-year-old from Western China, is 37-10 overall. He's 1-1 in the UFC. He lost his debut to Josh Kulabau, came back and beat Sean Soriano in his second UFC outing. That was last November at UFC Fight Night Vieira versus Tate. Both of those fights were unanimous decisions. He'll be taking on Brown. The 32-year-old Glory MMA and Fitness prospect is, well, I say prospect, product anyway. He's 32 and this is his 25th fight. He is 16-8 overall. He is 2-2 since joining the UFC out of the 3rd season of Dana White's Contender Series. Lost his first 2 to Jordan Griffin and Danny Chavez. Since then has come back with 2 straight wins over Kai Kamaka and Charles Rosa. The second of those, the Rosa fight, was this past January at UFC on ESPN, Kattar versus Chikadze. On a card full of very, very close matchups on the odds books, this one is one of the wider lines. Brown's minus 200 right now, Shayilan plus 170. Keith, 2 guys enter the cage at 500 in the UFC. One of them is going to leave above 500, presumably. Yeah. Which one of them is it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was wondering why Brown was such a favorite, as you said that. Brown's a wrestle boxer, so I like those guys. I do think he's better than the 2-2 record the UFC shows. That's surely just based on the skills I've seen. He's a good boxer. He's got fast hands, a stinging jab. His crossing and hooks do have some power. He does drop his hands though and keeps his chin high, which make him a huge target. And he's been hurt a lot. I mean, I think about like the Danny Chavez fight. Danny Chavez kind of teed off on him a little bit. But some of the things I like about him, he throws a lot of kicks, goes to the head with a fast kick. He's a very good wrestler, nice reactionary double, chain wrestles together. Good on top, good ground pound. He has a submission threat. He kind of has that the wrestling submissions, like he likes the head and arm choke, triangle choke. So I like some of the things he does. Now, Shayilan, he's a shorter, stocky kind of guy, has some pop. He loves his overhand right and is a little happy with his power shots. Because he throws so many power shots, he can have some low output, and he's not a great athlete. I'd say he's a minus athlete. And I go all the way back, like when I was watching regional scene of him before he was in the UFC, he went against Zhu Rong and got absolutely crushed. When he fought Josh Kulabau, he really struggled with the speed of Josh Kulabau. That's on the feet. Now, on the ground, he's a good wrestler. Like, he's relentless to get a takedown. He will shoot. Sometimes he'll shoot without a setup. We actually kind of saw that in his last fight against Sean Soriano, Province's own. But you can do that against a guy like Sean Soriano. When he's at top, he does need to improve his top game, but he has a submission threat. He has a bunch of submissions going back to his regional scene. As far as prediction goes, I like Brown here. I think he looked really, really good in his last fight against Charles Rosa. I think a lot of guys look really good against Charles Rosa, so maybe I'm giving him a little too much credit than I think he should. But I think he's a better boxer. I really do. I think he can do enough in the grappling to at least like cancel out Shayilan's and kind of force it to be on the feet. I like his output more than Shayilan's, and I think he's a better athlete. So, and I think he's got more high level experience. So overall, this is one of the ones I actually feel pretty good. So give me Brown by decision and a fairly confident pick.
I'm all on board with you here. The thing I'll give Brown is that he has looked better to me in each of his UFC outings. Like his first two, his first two outings in the UFC, sure, he lost both of them, but not only that, they've not aged well. He has ended up being Danny Chavez's. He has ended up being Danny Chavez's only UFC win.
Yeah.
He was the only win. Like Jordan Griffin went 1-5 in his last 6 fights in the UFC, and Brown was the only win out of those. But since then, you say, he looked good against Charles Rosa, and maybe it's easy to look good against him. But for what it's worth, he made the TJ Brown game go really well against Charles Rosa. And same in the Kai Kamaka fight, even if he just barely won it. To the point where I now think, okay, this guy belongs. Like, he's probably not going to lose his job if he loses here. He probably belongs in the UFC no matter what.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm not sure about that in the case of Shayilan. Weird to say this about a fighter who has as many fights as he does. I mean, we have him down for 47 fights, and him being a fighter from the Chinese regional scene, it may be 50 by the time we get to fight night. We may still be finding more like lost tournaments on this guy. But
Jay Petru will find him too.
Yeah. He, like, none of his. You point out that he's a good wrestler, and part of that I think is just he's a pretty athletic guy, physically strong, good tools for it. But none of his other skills really stand out that strongly to me. He feels like a bit of an overreach in the UFC's search for the next Chinese star, where they're just like, totally this guy from China has got a pretty good highlight reel. He was at the time a teammate of Weili Zhang. Not anymore, since Zhang has kind of moved her training to the States. But yeah, I don't know if he'll be gone after this one, but I don't think he's long for the UFC at this point, whereas Brown has kind of staked out a little place for himself. Give me Brown to use his wrestling in reverse to kind of keep things on the feet and probably hurt Shayilan a few times. I don't know if we'll get a finish, but I bet his power is gonna give Shayilan something to think about. And Shayilan maybe a little busted up by the end of this fight, but give me Brown with a pretty comfortable decision.
Let me ask you this question before we move on. So TJ Brown, I made a joke about him beating up Charles Rosa, saying anybody can look good. TJ Brown left the UFC and fought in Bellator. He's instantly a title challenger, isn't he? I mean, Sydney Outlaw is fighting for the title.
Yeah, I mean, Brown, obviously he'd be outside of like the McKee and Pitbull duo, but I mean, you want to tell me he can't?
Oh yeah, he's 145. Sorry, I'm thinking
he's 145. But
yeah, I mean, sorry, I was thinking at 155 for a second. Sorry, I screwed that up.
But yeah, I mean, dude, okay, Pedro Carvalho challenged for the title a year ago.
But 145 is much better. For some reason, I was thinking about 155, and I was thinking,
dude, he might challenge for the 155 title.
Yeah, like I don't think he could beat Patricky, but he's probably the second best if he did. Like, for some reason, I thought he was 155. I just screwed that up.
What must Chandler think? Where Chandler's like, Sydney Outlaw, who I basically punted out of the cage in my last fight in Bellator, is over there fighting for the title.
Good Lord. In the best division in MMA, or one of them.
Yeah. Not the best division in Bellator. No, sir. Yeah. Next up at UFC Vegas 57, we have the light heavyweights, as it is Carlos Ulberg versus Tafon Nchukwi. Ulberg, the 31-year-old New Zealander, is 4-1 overall in mixed martial arts. He is, of course, a former kickboxer. He's 1-1 since joining the UFC out of the 2020 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He lost his debut to Kennedy Nzechukwu by second round knockout, came back and won a 3-round decision over Fabio Cherant in February at UFC 271. He will attempt to keep that momentum going against Nchukwi. The 27-year-old Cameroonian, by way of the Washington, D.C. area, is 6-2 overall. He's 2-2 since joining the UFC out of the same season of the Contender Series. He has alternated wins and losses, defeating Jamie Pickett, losing to Jin Yong Park, defeating Mike Rodriguez, and most recently at UFC Fight Night, Santos versus Ankalaev in March, losing by third-round knockout to Azamat Mirzakhanov. Odds on this one are close. Ulberg, the slightest of favorites as of the beginning of fight week. He's out there around -115, -120 on most books. Nchukwi available at even money +100 most places. Keith, stardom is there for Carlos Ulberg if he can just win some fights. He's a teammate of Israel Adesanya. He's a city kickboxing guy. He looks like a villain from a 90s kickboxing movie. Like, he's just this good-looking dude, tall and ripped. He's got the arrogance. He's got the arrogance of a kickboxing movie villain. And arrogance is good.
Yeah, like he could have been in Karate Kid 3.
Yeah.
As like Daniel's opponent. Instead of that, like replace the the ponytail guy with him. Like it works.
Yeah. Like it's all there. Like Ulberg has that little chip on his shoulder, that little bit of.
Let's see how much power we have. Like the most popular TV show in the world right now is Cobra Kai. Can we get Carlos Ulberg? Can we get him in? Can we get him in Cobra Kai? Can we make this a thing?
Let's see.
Yeah, like they bring in like assistant to help.
Hey, I mean, we got like 19,000 subscribers. I'm sure that like the entertainment world is like flexing around us like the Matrix around Neo, you know?
Yeah, that's it. It's gonna happen. Who knows? Maybe one of our listeners is like an executive with Netflix or something.
Yeah. Come on. Dev, boss, any of you guys?
Yeah.
But like obviously you do have to keep winning your fights. The UFC was all teed up to make Blood Diamond the next big thing.
Oh yeah.
Like how many times did they just call a dude by his nickname in his very first fight?
Blood Diamond.
You got to be. Well, you got to be a buddy of Israel Adesanya, and you have to have one hell of a kickboxing highlight reel.
Yeah.
And that fell flat on its face. So did Ulberg in his first outing. I mean, he looked good for a bit against Kennedy and Nchukwi, but left his chin out where it shouldn't have been, and Nchukwi made him pay for it.
Yeah.
Came back with a win over Fabio Charant. I mean, dude, that fight sucked so bad. That fight was so bad that Charant's coach apologized to Ulberg in the cage afterwards. Like Henry Hooft was like, I'm sorry, our guy didn't show up.
Yeah.
Does he keep it going here against Nchukwi, or is he going to trip again?
It's funny you said this because I actually like forgot how bad that fight was. I actually like put notes down as like it was a good showing for Ulberg.
It was a great showing for Ulberg, but
I forgot that Charant did nothing. This is intriguing because I think it's such an evenly matched fight, and I really think the winner will take a big step up. They did have a pretty solid win over a pretty talented opponent. They're built really different. Like Nchukwi is this short, stocky, light heavyweight that's built like a brick shit house. Athletic. He for those short guy, he throws a lot of spinning attacks. He also surprisingly has a high kick for a short guy. He actually has like a high kick, like a Derek Lewis high kick, where you don't think it's possible that they can get their leg up there, but they do.
Yep.
He's in the pocket. He's a good pocket boxer. I shouldn't say he's a good pocket, but he's just like a strong, powerful guy. So anytime he throws punches, it's a danger. He throws a lot of wide haymakers, and he tends to load up on everything, but he has power in both of his hands. In fairness, though, I should mention this as I watched his last fight. He wasn't as wild in his last fight against Murzakanov. Like he was pretty composed. Like he was kind of like a little more calculated in the striking. I do like him in the clinch. Like he lands power shots in clinch. I think some of it has to do with being shorter. It's like easy to land uppercuts. He does well to frame and kind of land small shots in small places. He did show some offensive wrestling against Mike Rodriguez. He took him down 3 times, but he has been taken down 3 out of his last 4 fights, but did show in his last fight a little bit of improved takedown defense. Plus, when he's taken down, he's so strong, it's really hard to hold him down. He can kind of just like do a push-up and he's back up to his feet. Ulberg, as you mentioned, is very athletic. He's a good kickboxer. He's composed, stays with it kind of within his realm, what he wants to do. High volume, quick, accurate, technically sound. He kind of has like a modified high guard where he kind of keeps one side really high, glued to his face, and he's kind of like pulling with his left hand. He uses feints well, both with his hands and his hips, kind of a lot of shoulder rolls and stuff. He uses distance well, a bit of an outfighter. I'd say plus power, good kicks. He likes those oblique kicks. I like the way he pivots when attacked. You mentioned Fabio Charant. Like, he didn't do much, but when he did, Ulberg did a good job of like pivoting and cutting the angle and like kind of landing a check left hook when he did. And he showed some good takedown defense recently. Like, he's not easily taken down for a guy who's like a kickboxer. I'm really intrigued with this matchup. I am on the fence, but I'm going to go with Ulberg. Both guys are great athletes. They really are. But Ulberg has the length. he's gonna need to keep moving. He's gonna need to cut angles. He's gonna need to avoid the fence, not get pressured back, not get overpowered the physicality of Nchukwi. However, once he does, I think he can start picking him apart in the range. I think he kind of the deeper the fight goes, I think the more Ulberg's speed advantage and length and everything takes over. Especially if Nchukwi is throwing like haymakers, hitting air. That won't go well. I actually think Ulberg's going to find a late finish. Give me Ulberg by third round TKO.
I'm with you on this one, and I should have mentioned off the top that as stacked as Nchukwi is, he's only really moved up to 205 in earnest in his last couple fights. I mean, he was a 185er coming up for a lot of it. Or at least fighting 185ers. You know, like his UFC debut was against Jamie Pickett on the Contender Series. He fought.
Pickett's a big dude, though.
Pickett's a big dude, but I mean, on the Contender Series, he fought Almadaval that didn't even look like they should be like allowed to fight each other. But you know, he's moved up and fought good-sized light heavyweights and Mike Rodriguez and Azamat Mirzakhanov.
Well, Mike Rodriguez is huge light heavyweight.
Yeah, huge.
Not good. He's not good, but he won this past weekend. So.
Hey, was it CES?
Yes. Yeah, I actually didn't go. But that's how bad the scene is right now. I just think I'm not going. 10 minutes down the road, I'm not going.
But I'm with you here because, you know, Nchukwi is going to want to strike with him. He's going to want to try to knock him out. And Ulberg is just a much niftier striker, better footwork, faster, longer reach. Unless Ulberg just has a lapse and makes a mistake like he did against Nchukwi, like I think this is his fight to win. And I agree with you that he will probably. I mean, I could see the first round being close as he's cautious, lets Nchukwi come to him, kind of feels out the range and the rhythm. But once he starts making Nchukwi miss and starts punishing him with counters, you know, starts slipping out the side and just Nchukwi's charging and swinging at air. Like once Nchukwi starts getting tired, if Ulberg wants to turn on the jets, I can see him getting a late finish as well. So I'm just going to be uncreative and jump right on here with a third round TKO for Carlos Ulberg. And yeah, just watch the publicity, you know, train just keep on cranking. You know, he will figure prominently in Adesanya's next embedded, you know, episode, I'm sure.
No, wait till he's doing he's Johnny fights in Mexico or something. Sorry if I give a spoiler to
the next season.
Yeah, the next season of Cobra Kai if you're not caught up.
Yeah. We head now to the middleweight division for a matchup between Chris, the action man Curtis, and Rodolfo, the black belt hunter Vieira. Curtis, the 34-year-old career journeyman, and I don't mean that in any way as a bad thing, but who just has come out of nowhere to take the UFC by storm, is 28-8 overall. He is 2-0 since joining the UFC last fall. Knocked out Phil Hawes in his debut at UFC 268, turned things around 4 weeks later and knocked out Brendan Allen at UFC on ESPN, Font versus Aldo. He is going to try to make it 3 straight here against Vieira, the 32-year-old Brazilian, one of the most decorated grapplers you will ever see crossing over to MMA in earnest. I mean, we're talking about an Abu Dhabi champ, a 5-time Mundial's gold medalist, just one of the greatest grapplers of all time. He is 8-1. He is 3-1 in the UFC. All 3 of his wins have been by submission, as was his lone loss. That one loss, of course, last February at UFC 258, gassed out horribly and got tapped out by Anthony Hernandez in one of the more shocking outcomes in modern UFC history. But, you know, came back from that and tapped out Dustin Stoltzfus last July in the 3rd round to get things back on track. And he's going to keep trying to keep going against Curtis. He is not favored to do so. The action man, Chris Curtis, -155 as the moderate favorite as of the beginning of fight week. Vieira +135 on the comeback. Keith, I was a little surprised by the odds here. It's not that Chris Curtis has a bad ground game. Like he's not a chump on the ground. He's a well-rounded fighter who just happens to be a dynamic knockout artist. But Chris Curtis is going to be badly outsized by Rodolfo Vieira, who is a hulking dude for 185. And Vieira, he is one of the greatest grapplers ever, certainly in his weight category. It is absolutely transferred across to MMA. You know, he's been a lockdown grappler in MMA.
Yeah.
You know, he debuted in the UFC. His first 2 UFC wins were arm triangle choke submissions of Oscar Piechota and Saparbek Safarov. And Safarov in particular is not a chump on the ground. And Vieira just made it look like he was doing, I mean, he made it look like he was just like folding laundry with the person still inside them. Like, you know, the misstep against Anthony Hernandez, obviously he came in at one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year. All the spotlight was on him. He came in just too much steam, gassed out, and yeah, and we saw what happened. I think of that as the outlier.
Okay.
I don't think, like, I'm not saying he's going to be able to run all the way up the 185-pound rankings and turn everybody into origami, but I think if he and Anthony Hernandez run it back, he fights a more patient game plan and he handles Anthony Hernandez.
Yes,
like, I think that was just something that needed to happen to Vieira once. I'm interested here to see if he can get Curtis to the ground, you know, because Vieira he's not one of your like 90s jiu-jitsu guys in MMA. Like, he's a big, strong guy. He's very athletic. He has like good entries. He has, you know, he has ways to get the fight to the ground in an MMA contest. I'm interested to see if he can do it to Curtis. And if he doesn't have success early on, like if he's having trouble getting him to the ground in the first round, who's getting more tired from those attempts? You know, like, does it turn into things where Curtis is just wide legging against the fence and Vieira's bent at the waist, just like hauling on him with all his might for half a round and he's gassed out? Or is it things where he's getting Curtis down and Curtis is having to scramble for his life while Vieira is burning less energy? Again, you know, Curtis is the favorite here, and with his arsenal of, you know, fun techniques, just his quick twitch athleticism, his power in both his hands and his kicks, he can put Vieira's lights out at any time. But I was surprised to see that he is the favorite here. I may feel silly about this pick after about half a round, especially if Vieira's already been knocked out by then. But yeah, I like Vieira to be able to get things done here. Give me Rodolfo Vieira to be able to get Curtis to the ground in the first round. And in the first round, with both these guys fresh, both these guys dry, with him with like some time to work, I think he taps him out in the first round. I think Curtis sticks around for a while. He's going to be a highlight machine in this division. But I think this is Rodolfo Vieira's night. Give me the underdog by first round submission.
Yeah. This is a really tough one. This is the one I had the hardest time making a prediction on the entire card, because to me, when the fight ends, like, there's going to be so many answers. You know, if Chris Curtis wins again and he beats Rodolfo Vieira, like, this isn't a journeyman who got kind of nice fluky start to the UFC. Like, that's 3 really huge wins in a row. Rodolfo Vieira, in that sense, it'd be like, whoa, now he's 4-1 in the UFC. And yeah, the Anthony Hernandez fight was a fluke. He just got his best win beating Chris Curtis. Really, I'm really intrigued by this matchup. Curtis, I like how you described him like a journeyman. Like, he's a UFC newcomer, but he has so much experience fighting in every scene. Seems like every region, held titles in like every top, regional promotion, and he's looked sensational so far in the UFC. The dude starts Brendan Allen and Phil Hawes, like two of the best like guys, rising stars. Guys on the outside of the top 10, kind of rising up the rankings, and he starts.
Would it be fair to say, I mean, if he beats Hawes, Allen, and now Vieira, that's 3 guys that are probably in that 11 to 20 range.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have Chris Curtis in our Sherdog rankings. Last time I checked, those are huge wins. You mentioned he's a bit undersized. He's a former welterweight that's now fighting at 185, but the power is there, which is funny because that was never Chris Curtis's game. Like, I would say he had power, but he wasn't like a hit you one time, put you out kind of guy. And now he is. And he's always been like kind of like a technically sound, compact, tight southpaw boxer. Good in the pocket. He throws these like tight hooks. He loves uppercuts. He loves to work the body. But yeah, you got to say the power's there now. He throws good calf kicks. He still doesn't throw enough calf kicks for my liking. He still needs to improve his footwork a little bit. Specifically, he needs to learn how to pivot a little bit when being pressured. He also pillars, which I think will get him starched someday. Not this fight, but it will get him starched. But he does, like, he pillars and rolls, so he kind of deflects some of the power because of that. And he doesn't get hurt often because of that. He has been gun shy in the past, but I think that might be a thing of the past because he has so much confidence around him right now that I think it's gone. He's an okay offensive wrestler. He really won't look to wrestle, but if he gets a takedown, he's got some pretty good top control, decent takedown defense, and he's fought 5 rounds in the past. So going hard 3 rounds shouldn't be an issue. Vieira, he likes to battle more on the feet than I think he should, but he hits hard. I mean, look at him. The guy's built like freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger, but and I'm talking about like Terminator Arnold Schwarzenegger, not the current. Yeah.
I mean, even the current one's like more jacked than me, but yeah, you know.
Oh yeah. Same. He lands more than you'd expect, and I think that's because of the opponents being so wary of his takedowns. But he does lack head movement. He gets hit a lot. He showed that he has a pretty good chin. I mean, Safarov landed some decent shots on him. Anthony Hernandez landed some big shots on him. I think he had a little bit of that like Mark Madsen thing going, where he lands more because everyone's expecting takedowns from him. But he's a really good wrestler. Fast entries. He drives through the hips. Explosive. Extremely elite grappling. I mean, you said all the accolades. 7-time World Cup champ, 5-time world champion, Abu Dhabi, all of them. I've compared him to Bass. I still think this is the best comparison when I look at his style. He reminds me of Ricardo Rona. Now, a lot of people, like 50% of listeners just said, who? Look at Ricardo Rona. He's one of the best grapplers in MMA history, one of the best grapplers in BJJ history. He has gas on the pass, which is a massive issue against a guy like Chris Curtis. I have flip-flopped on this one. If I knew Vieira would shoot immediately, I would feel much more confident picking him. I think he'll have his moments. I think Curtis is going to hit him and can put him out. But I think, all right, I'll pull back the curtain. I wrote Chris Curtis by 2nd round knockout. I picked Chris Curtis, and then I just kept thinking, I'm like, no, a year ago, would you have taken Chris Curtis over Rodolfo Vieira? And I'd be like, no, absolutely not. I would have taken Rodolfo Vieira to submit him in the very first round. And I'm like, is the 2 wins over Hawes and over Brendan Allen, is that going to change what you've thought of Chris Curtis after you've seen him so many times in the past? I'm so torn. But I actually think the knockouts for Curtis could actually hurt his chances in this fight. And what I mean by that is Vieira's seen him starch his last 2 opponents. And Vieira can't possibly say, I'm a better striker than Brendan Allen. Or I definitely can't say I'm a better striker than Phil Hawes. So I think he's going to want to get this fight to the ground. And I think he does. I think he gets enough takedowns. And I'm going to say he finds a submission late in the 2nd round. Give me I'll flip my pick. I'll go with the upset too. And I'll go with Rodolfo Vieira by 2nd round submission.
There you go. 2 picks, though with not a ton of confidence, for Rodolfo Vieira by submission. The UFC on ESPN 38 card powers on in the bantamweight division with a matchup between Nate Maness and Umar Nurmagomedov. Maness, the 30-year-old Kentucky native, is 14-1 overall. He is 3-0 in the UFC. Has beaten Johnny Munoz, Luke Sanders, and Tony Gravely, all within the space of about the past 20 months or so. His most recent outing, though, last September, knocked out Gravely in the 2nd round. He will be taking on Nurmagomedov. The 26-year-old Dagestani is a perfect 14-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. He's 2-0 in the UFC. He beat Morozov, who fights earlier on this card, by 2nd round submission last January. Came back this March and choked out Brian Kelleher, who also appears earlier on this card. Odds on this one. Keith mentioned off the top that there are a lot of close lines on this card. This is not one of them. The best you can get Nurmagomedov right now is -800. You can get Maness around +550 or +600 if you choose your book correctly. Keith, I'm going to ask you a question before I ask you for your pick on this fight.
I'm going to ask you a question too.
Nate Maness is 14-1. Umar Nurmagomedov is 14-0. If you were to switch their records, so Maness is 14-0, Nurmagomedov is 14-1. Oh, and by the way, Umar Nurmagomedov's last name is something else. What's the line?
Okay. His last name's Smith.
Yeah. Umar Smith from
He's,
Dagestan.
Omar Smith. He's still from Dagestan, though.
Yeah. He's still from
Okay, so he's still
Dagestan.
from Dagestan, so that
He's
gives him
still
a
from
couple.
Dagestan. He still is a literal cousin of Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Okay.
He's still an Eagles Fight Club guy,
Okay.
but just literally you take away the 0 in the last name.
Yeah.
What's the line on this one?
Umar Smith is still negative 200.
Yeah, he's around negative 200, not negative
Yeah.
800 or
Yeah.
like 950 on some cards.
Yeah.
You know, there are two things that will drive hype on you straight through the ceiling. That's having a 0 in the loss column. We talk about that almost every week. And then there is having Nurmagomedov as your last name. It's why all those guys, they say, oh, this is Khabib's cousin. This is Khabib's, nephew. It's like, well, of course, you're in a country of 5 million people with 3 last names. They're all his fucking cousin.
It's like when Vitor Belfort was trying to become Vitor Gracie.
Victor Gracie.
Yeah, Victor. Yeah, I'm sorry, Victor Gracie, not
Gracie.
Vito. Yeah, Victor Gracie. Yeah.
The best thing about that was he run into the ring, punch some guy 300 times in 18 seconds, and then carry him out yelling jiu-jitsu. Oh, Vitor.
Yeah.
So,
Henzo Gracie up kicks Oleg Taktarov, knocks him out, and then jumps up and says jiu-jitsu. Gracie jiu-jitsu. Yeah. My question to you: you said the best betting line is negative 800.
Yep.
What's the worst? Do you have it?
I saw him at minus 950. Like I didn't see him at quite.
I was wondering if he broke 1,000. Yeah.
He hadn't quite broke 1,000. He will this week. The line will keep going that way.
I can't imagine. Do you think there's anybody who bets $1,000 to win 100?
No, they throw him in a parlay as like a safe bet with a couple.
I just don't get it because you don't get anything when you throw these in the parlays. You turn you throw $100 and you win 200, and you throw in that extra fight. It's like, all right, you win $210. Cool.
Yeah, I don't get it either, unless you're like a weirdo that like parlays all the favorites or something.
Yeah,
like,
you just want to do it.
Yeah, that's a do not touch. Basically,
I got one more question for you.
Yeah,
Nate Maness called out Adrian Yanez. What is bigger balls, calling out Adrian Yanez or actually accepting a fight against Nurmagomedov?
That's saying a lot, dude. Because there's no upside to taking a fight with Nurmagomedov. Because I mean, not that. Well, yeah, but you're not. You're going to lose, and you're going to look terrible while you do it.
Yes.
Not to betray my pick, but
so you're telling me you're not taking, you're not betting against the negative 800 something favorite.
Dude, all I know is Nate Maness may well be a top 15 bantamweight on talent. Like he's a really good fighter.
Oh, I'm not. I disagree on that. At bantamweight.
Oh, okay. Bantamweight's a crowded division. Like I'm not saying he actually hits the top 15, but I'm at least saying he absolutely belongs in the UFC. Okay. He is a good fighter.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I think he's getting mauled here. So when I guessed at like the line, I knew Nurmagomedov was going to be a huge favorite. I was guessing negative 400, negative 800. That's crazy. Yeah. Nurmagomedov he's really good. He's well-rounded. He's very athletic. He's very comfortable on his feet for Nurmagomedov. He's got good footwork. He's light on his feet. He can fight at both stances. His boxing, I would say, is serviceable, but it's his taekwondo karate style to his strike. And throws tons of kicks, karate like kicks, turns over his hips so easy. And his wrestling is off the charts. I mean, his last name is Nurmagomedov. He's light and fast entries, smothering top control, gets in his opponent's hips, cuts the corner so quickly on top, cuts through his opponent's guard so easily. Strong, brutal ground and pound. He's got 7 submission wins. He looks so complete on the ground. I mean, look what he just did to Brian Kelleher. He made Brian Kelleher, who's a good fighter, we already talked about him, look like an amateur on the ground. Now, Maness, you're much higher on him than I am. Like, I think he's got like areas that are really good and areas that are really bad. He's a high output striker. He kind of willing to eat one to land one kind of style. He can take a beat and keep moving forward, but he's very hittable. Lacks head movement. He does have good pressure. He's got good power. He's a huge bantamweight. He's a big dude. But if you can kind of reverse the pressure, kind of force him fighting off his back foot, he doesn't like pressure. He doesn't like being pressured. He's open to leg kicks. Luke Sanders had some good success with the leg kicks. He will wrestle, and I'd say he's a good grappler. He has a submission. He's got 3 submission wins, but Maness is a brute. He really is. He's physically imposing, but Nurmagomedov is light years ahead of him in skills. I think he throws tons of kicks on the outside. I think when Maness starts to pressure in, I think that sets up him walking straight into a Nurmagomedov double leg takedown. Once hits the ground, I think Umar just does what he does. Ground and pounds him until a submission finds an opening. He locks in the submission. Give me Nurmagomedov by second round submission. Now, I said before the show that I do the survivor pool and I have like one confident pick. Well, I didn't really go ballsy. I went with the negative 800 favorite as my survivor pick, which I'm sure everybody's doing.
What method and round of victory did you have for this one?
Second round submission.
All right. Now, having said everything I said, where I think Maness is a good fighter, and I think he's going to stick around the bantamweight division. I'm with you. Nurmagomedov is better than him literally everywhere, and he's particularly better than him in ways that don't make me feel good about Maness's chances to make it to the final horn. Like, honestly, again, we are not a betting podcast. Sherdog has several. You should listen to them if you're interested. But if I were to touch anything here, you might as well take the prop for in the distance, because unless Nurmagomedov chooses to play with his food, I think he's going to be able to do whatever he wants to Maness within the first round and a half of this fight. To keep it a little different from Keith, I'm going to say he gets it done in the first round, but the mechanic is going to be the same. He will take it to the ground when he gets tired of playing the kicking game. And from there, I think he'll advance position quickly, soften him up with ground and pound, and either pound him out or choke him out. I will say first round TKO on the ground. Yeah,
and to add to that inside the distance pick, like Maness is his only chance is kind of catching him with a big shot, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you before we move on. Better prospect at 135, Nurmagomedov or Giannis?
It pains me to say it, but it makes, like, head to head, I would take Nurmagomedov just because Giannis's defensive wrestling and ground game are still his most untested skill set, and that's not a place to play with Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I mean, if Nurmagomedov decided to try out his kicking game against Yanez, could he get pelted a bunch? And absolutely he could. But if Nurmagomedov plays it smart, I think he's got that, even though I love Adrian Yanez.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said.
And I would say the same thing about Nurmagomedov versus Sean O'Malley. Nurmagomedov's not going to mess with that. He'll take him down and,
Yeah, I agree. Think about those 3 guys as prospects for Rising. That's a fucking great division.
It is. I mean, they're all 26, 26, and 27, I think.
Yeah, what a great division.
Like Giannis is 27 and he's the old one.
What a division.
Seriously.
I mean, you got Aljamain Sterling, you got Frey, you got Henry Cejudo coming back, you got Dominic Cruz still hanging on, you got Jose Aldo, you got the name values, Frankie Edgar, TJ Dillashaw is back up there. Guys like Corey Singh hanging, Marlon Cheeto Vera. What a division. And then you get these prospects we're talking about. And I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of guys.
Dude, Merab is just hanging out here like what?
Oh, yeah. What about him?
Merab's I'm the one nobody wants to fucking fight.
That's imagine that matchup.
The UFC on ESPN 38 main card soldiers on with a matchup in the lightweight division. It's Thiago Moises versus Christos Giagos. Moises, the 27-year-old Brazilian, is 15-6 overall. He is 4-4 since joining the UFC out of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, but those 2 have come against Islam Makhachev, who might be your champ by the end of this year, and Joel Alvarez, who is, one of the bigger prospects in the division, literally and figuratively. He's going to try to get things back on track against Giagos. The 32-year-old Californian is 19-9 overall. He is 5-5 in the UFC across 2 separate stints with the promotion. On this most recent signing, he is 4-3. He did lose his last time out. It was a quick first round TKO loss to Arman Tsarukyan, who tops this card. That snapped the momentum of a 2-fight win streak over Sean Soriano and Carlton Maness. Moises is a pretty comfortable favorite here. He's -240. Giagos +200 as the underdog. Keith, for a guy that's only 27 years old, and really, I mean, he only turned 27 a couple months ago, Thiago Moises has been on a bit of a roller coaster ride in the UFC in terms of how we perceive him. Because he came out of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil, immediately lost a pretty one-sided fight to Beneil Dariush, but he strung together a 3-fight win streak that, I mean, it propelled him into, if not the Sherdog top 10, at least into the top 15. I know he was definitely on our bubble list. And if he was in our top 15, I'm sure he was in the UFC's top 10 because, you know, they only rank their own fighters. And now he's just come tumbling back down. I feel as though he was probably overranked when he beat Michael Johnson, Bobby Green, and Alexander Hernandez. And
he arguably lost to Bobby Green.
Yeah, arguably lost to Bobby Green, was getting pelted by Michael Johnson and got a flash submission out of nowhere. Yeah, and then did beat Alexander Hernandez. But
wasn't that like a terrible fight, the Hernandez fight?
Yeah, because it was
terrible. Yeah.
It was after Hernandez turned into the guy that just has terrible fights every time out.
Yeah.
But that all pushed him into the top 10. And I think that was a little too much too soon. I mean, he was 25 at the time he beat Hernandez.
Yeah.
That was too early for this guy to run into the Islam Makhachevs of the world. It's not even as though he's a bust. Because again, he's 27. 4 years from now, he could be in the top 10 and maybe approaching the title picture, like after just having continued to develop his skills. Like he's in no wise a finished product here.
But think about the champion in the division.
Perfect example. Champion in the division was a guy that did not seem to have title upside at all until he did. So
he was a scream at the TV guy. He really was.
He was absolutely. He was. Sometimes you scream at the TV on weigh-ins day. Didn't even have to get to the cage. You're like, what the hell are you doing?
That's right. That's right. And Vanessa was still doing that with him.
Yeah. Apparently we still are. Yeah. Like, oh my goodness. But if you take a little bit of detachment and just, okay, what has he done? Let's not go on the assumption that he's a top 10 guy who's just on a rough skid, or he's not just a borderline roster guy who got lucky. Just look at what he's done. He's lost to Islam Makhachev, Damir Ismagulov, and Beneil Dariush, all top 5 quality guys. He's lost to Joel Alvarez, who's good. I mean, he's very good. The only question is whether his giant ass is going to continue to keep making 155. But he has, I mean, honestly, he's in the same position Moises was a year or two ago. Like, he just seems to have all the upside in the world. And the guys he's beaten, Hernandez, Green, Johnson, Kurt Hollabaugh, none of them are bad fighters. I mean, they're inconsistent fighters. But
yeah, I was going to say Hollabaugh and Johnson. Hernandez is okay. Bobby Green was on a nice little run.
Yeah. Because of that, I think this Christos Giagos fight is actually a perfect test of where he is right now. If he's the guy we think he is, he handles Christos Giagos. If he loses, okay, it's time to stop talking about him as even a fringe contender for the time being. Or even if he really, really struggles with him. If it's another Hernandez fight where just not a whole lot happens.
I agree.
Because Giagos, on the other hand, is very much a known quantity. Like, he's not meant to go in there with your Arman Tsarukyan, your Charles Oliveira's. Even the 2018 Charles Oliveira was not. But, you know, if you need someone to get the Sean Sorianos and Carlton Mineses of the world off your roster, you need someone to just kind of sweep them out. Hand Christos Giagos that broom.
Hold on a second. Did he go from Tsarukyan to Soriano? Was that the?
No, it was he lost to Jakar Close. Then he beat Carlton Minus.
Okay.
Alaska's finest, Sean Soriano. So the biggest and the smallest states. And then from there into Arman Tsarukyan.
He went from Sean Soriano to Arman Tsarukyan.
I mean,
holy Christ!
I'm surprised he didn't have whiplash when he got into the cage just from like the speed.
That's like that'd be like playing like football for the East Providence Townies, and then your next you had 3 touchdowns. Guess what? Monday night, New England Patriots. You're playing the Dolphins Monday night. No. Like, what the
hell? Because unlike Moises, where I'm like, okay, we need to figure out now. We've stepped on the gas. We've pounded the brakes. let's figure out what Thiago Moises really is. I feel as though Christos Giagos is much more of a known quantity.
Yeah.
You know, he's a guy who's solid everywhere, not an easy out unless you're Arman Tsarukyan level fighter, like a he's physically big, just strong, yoked guy.
Yeah.
He looks like he should be a better athlete than he is. I actually don't think he's like a super fast twitch freak. I think of him as more of just like a muscle grindy type guy.
I think he's a pretty good athlete. You're talking about Giagos.
I'm talking about Giagos. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a good athlete. I actually think that's yeah, okay. I don't know. We might disagree. I think he's a good athlete. But he is a big yokey dude.
I love his I love his hair game. He is the answer to what would it look like if a white guy went to Lorenz Larkin's barber, just always got some cool like shit like carved and faded in, or got some great cornrows.
Okay.
But
Larkin's barber. Shout out to Lorenz Larkin's barber.
Dude, I think Lorenz Larkin is great, and his hair game is always on point.
Let's find out who his barber's name is.
I'll probably find out. I think I still got his phone number from when I interviewed him for Bellator. Like, yo, man. He'd think I was asking for myself and not want to tell me.
Yeah, I need a new high and tight. What can I get? Who's your go-to?
I need a high and gray. Who do I? Oh.
There you go.
I think we found out about Moises that his stand-up game still needs some work. Like even pretty good MMA strikers are at this point giving him trouble. And good grappler, opportunistic grappler, obviously, but he does not always have the wrestling to determine where the fight goes. That was a problem against Johnson, he just got pieced up for a whole round and then kind of scrambled into Achilles lock in the second round. It was a problem against
Michael Johnson's entire career could be summed up in that one fight.
Yep.
Looking like the best fighter in the world, only to get submitted like a minute later.
Yep. Yeah, he's a whole different kind of scream at the TV fighter than like John Dodson. Because Dodson, you're just screaming at him to do something. You're screaming at him, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Two different things.
Yeah.
But Makhachev grounded him with ease at will, which of course Makhachev's going to do that. But in the Hernandez fight, like he couldn't get the fight to the ground when he wanted it to, even though he won the fight, I still think he's going to have enough to get Giagos out of here. Give me Moises to be able to get this fight to the ground against Giagos. He might have to learn the hard way. He might get pieced up a little bit, but give me Moises by third round submission in a fight that's probably harder than it should be for a guy of his raw skills.
Yeah, and just to build off the point about Russian Moises, besides having to fight Islam Makhachev, that also headlined a UFC card when he was 25 years old. So, talking about adding pressure to him. Moises on the feet. He's a boxer who he tends to keep everything tight, but he has low output, single strike attacks. And it's pretty unfortunate because I think his hands are pretty fast. I think he is a pretty good athlete in that sense. I think he has some like raw power. I think you mentioned that. He throws tons of kicks. He's got some good kicks everywhere. And I think it's some of the reason why he throws a lot of kicks is he doesn't care if you grab his leg and try to take him out. That's where he wants to go anyways. He mixes up his striking to set up his takedowns. He's an above average wrestler, but he kind of struggles to kind of get to the second level of the entry. And that's someone who does jiu-jitsu. It doesn't come from a wrestling background, driving through hips and stuff. That's not something jiu-jitsu guys really do. He'll often just shoot to kind of close the distance, and then from there he'll just like pull his opponent down on top of himself. Like he'll pull guard. He's a very good BJJ practitioner. He's got 6 submission wins. He will go down to an ankle. Like you mentioned, he caught Michael Johnson with it. He almost caught Bobby Green in their fight. Giagos, I like I said, I think he's a better athlete than you're saying. High output. He can fight at both stances. He loves like a high draining, explosive strikes, the ones that like drain your cardio. He tries to take his opponent's head off with every single strike. He'll often overthrow shots and kind of load up on everything, and he fights at a crazy wild pace. He will wrestle, and if he gets on top, like you mentioned, he's a big dude, and he's strong, so you can kind of ground and pound. He's a pretty good BJJ practitioner. some decent back takes. But because of that style, and because of and you mentioned how big he is, how much muscle he can fade late. I'm with you. I'm going with Moises. Giagos throws these wild shots, and because he throws these wild shots, I really think it gives Moises a chance to kind of catch him off balance, to just close the distance, even if it's just to close the distance and then kind of like roll underneath, pull guard or to Imanari roll or something. I expect Moises to work a heavy top pressure game. Giagos has 4 submission losses, so that's not really good. Yeah, one of them was to Charles Oliveira. But I like Moises to get something late, especially when Thiago's kind of gasses out a little bit. Give me Moises by 3rd round submission. And one thing I want to say, you mentioned how young Moises is, 27. Like, don't give up on him yet. Like, he's only 27.
Yeah.
Like, he could make a huge jump in improvement since his last fight.
Absolutely.
And he's going to need to, because he got his ass handed to him by Joel Alvarez.
Yeah. Well, and if anything, I'll just say this because we've already talked a good while about him, but now that we've seen him against Makhachev and seen him against Alvarez, if anything, he'll get the time to develop because there's no reason to rush him back. You know what I mean? He's going to have to string together 3 or 4 wins before they even talk about putting him up against another fringe top 15 guy.
He beats Giagos. His next fight after that should be like a Jim Miller.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to give him a name, give him Donald Cerrone.
Next up on the UFC Vegas 57 main card is the obligatory heavyweight slobber knocker. It is Josh Parisian versus Alan Baudot. Josh Parisian, the 32-year-old Michigan native, is 14-5 overall. He is 1-2 in the UFC since joining out of the 2020 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He has lost to Parker Porter and Don'Tale Mayes, those two sandwiched around a win over Roque Martinez. The most recent of those, the Mayes fight, was last December, and Keith is already laughing.
Oh my God, you could have been better off saying Paul Montello and Jeff Munson or whatever. This like, what's Mike Kyle doing nowadays?
Oh my goodness, I probably don't want to know,
I'm
you as a law enforcement officer probably don't want to know.
I'm sorry, I'm messing up your intro.
Dude, this intro, it was messed up the moment I opened my mouth because this fight is messed up. He's going to try to get things back on track against Baudot. The 34-year-old Frenchman is 8-3 with 1 no contest overall. He is 0-2 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC in late 2020. Worth noting that 1 no contest was him getting punched out by Rodrigo Nascimento. So, I mean, unless you don't think Nascimento would have been able to do that without Ritalin, which is what he tested positive for, Baudot is effectively 0-3 in the UFC with 2 finishes and a decision loss to Parker Porter. Odds on this one, fittingly, are dead even. They're both minus 110 right now, so it's a pick 'em.
Yeah.
I understand that the UFC wants heavyweights, and it needs heavyweights. Whether the UFC is right or not about the idea that, casuals love the big guys, they do need a division.
Heavyweights.
Yeah, well, because, I mean, the UFC has 7 or 8 good heavyweights, and they need some people for those heavyweights to fight, and they need to find the next 7 or 8 heavyweights. So I understand why we need kind of low to mid-level heavyweight fights. We need them to sort out who is going to be decent versus who's not, or some bodies to feed the Tom Aspinalls of the world so he's not fighting Francis Ngannou in his 5th professional fight or something. But man, this one, there's just not much sizzle here. Both.
Have you seen The Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah, I've seen The Ultimate Fighter.
The replacements that are coming in, not better. Chandler Cole and it's bad.
I mean, Josh Parisian is he's a real heavyweight. Like, he's a legit big-bodied guy who's probably going to weigh in, between 250 and 260, and he's not particularly fat. He's an average athlete for a heavyweight, and he's a brawler who punches hard. I mean, he made headlines on the second season of Dana White's Contender Series because he knocked out Greg Rebello with a spinning back fist, which looked fantastic. Funny thing was, he had tried like 3 spinning back fists in that fight, and just the last one finally knocked him out. the most impressive
It
thing
wasn't
about the whole
it wasn't Hikaru Hamos setups.
it was not Ricardo Hamos, but the most impressive thing about the whole thing was that he tried 3 spinning back fists without his trunks falling off, because that was the season that Dana White's Contender Series, I guess they were just using like rejects from the UFC fight kits or something, but all the heavyweights had these like one size fits most like Velcro shorts that were always falling off of these dudes. That's what I remember most about that. You know, Parisian, he's worse than Parker Porter and he's better than Roque Martinez. That is a recipe for a guy that's going to hang around the fringe of the UFC heavyweight roster for probably a couple more years. The thing about Baudot,
that's the standard. Beat better than Roque Martinez. Jesus Christ.
I mean, he didn't get.
I'm sorry. I can't even hide that. My interest.
I mean, Alan Baudot would not still be in the UFC if he weren't a teammate of Francis Ngannou. It's as simple as that. Because he's had 3 fights in the UFC. You can forgive him for getting flattened by Tom Aspinall. That was a sacrificial lamb moment. Tom Aspinall's probably a future champ. But Rodrigo Nascimento, like, thrashed him. Parker Porter handled him easily. And Parker Porter handled him easily on the feet, and Baudot is supposedly a kickboxer. Baudot used to fight at light heavyweight. I don't know if that's realistic anymore. He's weighing in around 260 for all of his fights these days. And I don't even know if moving back to light heavyweight would serve him at this point. But Baudot, he's got long reach, throws pretty straight punches. He throws leg kicks. I think Parisian's just going to smash him. I think Parisian might even turn to wrestling and take him down. He's proven to be hapless on the ground, but even if it just turns into a brawl on the feet, I like Parisian better in a brawl here. Baudot has shown next to nothing to show that he is a UFC level heavyweight. So give me Josh Parisian by second round TKO.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So we're talking about heavyweights, and if the UFC just like strolled down Venice Beach with like the muscle beaches with the guy, or it's Venice Beach, right? Where they do the X's. And you just found 2 hulking Mr. Olympia type guys. And just like, hey, you guys ever fought MMA? No, never heard of MMA. Would you be more interested in the UFC just throw those 2 guys?
Yep.
On the card and just have, or you'd be better like you grab the strongman, the guy who's doing the strongman competition, and then
you might have the next Mariusz Pudzianowski.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Dude, Mariusz Pudzianowski would tool either of these guys.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, honestly, like we made jokes about him when he first started in UFC. I mean,
he turned into a decent fighter.
And now he's on a nice little run. Yeah. I'm sitting there thinking of just obscure heavyweights as you've been talking. Would you? I want to make a point. Wouldn't you be more interested in if we replaced? You said Parisian would destroy Baudot, take him out, and pull up 54-year-old. Hasn't won a fight since 2005. He's won one of his last 6 fights. If the UFC found Kimo Leopoldo and just threw him in this fight, would you be more interested?
Yes.
Not in the skill sense, because like I think Alan Baudot would beat 54-year-old Kimo Leopoldo, but just for the hell of it.
Absolutely. Like there'd be more interest on my part, more just morbid curiosity. I'd want to know if Kimo can still tote that giant cross like all the way to the cage. I mean, they're in bigger venues now. He has to walk quite a way with it. And I know it had a little wheel on the bottom end, so he wasn't just dragging it, but that thing looked heavy.
What about the guy, what was his name? The manager who got, he was his manager, his teammate. He also got nailed in the nuts by Keith Hackney like a million times, murdered somebody when he was in prison. Joe Son. Is he still alive?
I think he's alive in prison. He murdered someone else in prison, so he's never getting out. He's got
he raped a girl, went to prison, and then murdered.
He's one of the worst people ever to pass through MMA.
Yeah, but then you're like the training video, like the promo video would be like Joe Son talking from his jail cell to Kimo. Like, anyways. I don't know. I just don't want to talk about this fight. Like, does anybody really care what I have to say about this fight? It's like, when I was a kid, I used to. You ever had like chores as a kid? Like I was in like 3rd grade, and like before I could go out and play with my friends, my like mom had like me and my 2 sisters. We had like a checklist, and there was maybe like 9 chores. And we all had to do like 3 each. But every day she like mixing them up, who had to do what.
Yeah.
And I remember I always like if mine was like put away the dishes. It was easy. I was like third grade, but put away the dishes, put your clothes in the laundry, and do the windows. I'm like, oh fuck, not the windows. Like I always did it first. Like let me just get over with. I don't want to think about it while I'm doing the other chores. Let me just. That's how I feel like heavyweight. Like if you're gonna do it, just do it right away. Like give us the shit thing right away. Like don't make us get like all juiced up from like Moises and
Giagos.
Giagos having this like great fight and then throwing this at us next.
And we're thinking of Neil Magny versus Shavkat Rakhmonov after this.
And you're throwing this one. Josh, you know what? I'm not even breaking down because honestly, you broke him down enough. This skills. I have zero confidence in this fight. I am 100% convinced that Josh Parisian is bad. I'm only 99% convinced that Baudot is bad just because I've seen less of him. So screw it. I'll take Baudot in the ugliest decision ever.
All right, there you go. We have some high-level disagreement in this high-level fight, third from the top at UFC Vegas 57.
I was just going to take whoever you did. No.
See, Keith is just being contrarian. That brings us to the co-main event of UFC on ESPN 38, a contender versus prospect matchup in the welterweight division, as it is Neil Magny welcoming Shavkat Rakhmonov to the big time. Magny, the 34-year-old Haitian-American Chicago native by way of New York, is 26-8 overall. He is 19-7 since joining the UFC as one of the standout products of the 16th season of The Ultimate Fighter. He has won 2 in a row. They were both decision wins. One was over Jeff Neal last May. Then this past March at UFC on ESPN Blades versus Dawkins, he took a split decision over Max Griffin. He will be taking on Rakhmonov. The 27-year-old from Kazakhstan is a perfect 15-0. He is a perfect 3-0 since joining the UFC as a former M1 welterweight champ. He has defeated Alex Oliveira, Michel Prazeres, and Carlston Harris. All 3 of them finishes within the first 2 rounds. The most recent of those, the Harris fight, a spinning hook kick, and then some follow-up punches on the ground. Spectacular highlight reel knockout in the first round at UFC Fight Night Hermansson versus Strickland. Rakhmonov, one of the bigger favorites on the card. He is minus 400 to keep the good times going. Magny plus 310 as the underdog here. Keith, we talk a lot about the kind of trio of undefeated up-and-comers in the UFC welterweight division, and I feel as though most people I talk to kind of have them in the same order. And no disrespect, but like Sean Brady on the lowest end is just the one who's probably going to come up against some sort of ceiling or take his first loss first. Khamzat Chimaev as the kind of obvious standout of the class, as someone who's already beaten a top 5 fighter at this point. Mm-hmm. And then Rakhmonov as probably the most unknown quantity right in the middle. I mean,
yeah, I think that's fair.
If Rakhmonov comes out and just absolutely clowns on Neil Magny, is there anything he could do here to move out of his position in that pecking order?
No. Like it has nothing to do with him. It's what who Chimaev is. Chimaev is killing people. He beats the better fighter in Gilbert Burns, and it also has a lot to do with personality.
Sure.
Which it probably shouldn't be. I know you're asking strictly talent. I get that. If he goes out and starches Neil Magny, the sky's the limit for the guy. Because I will go to my grave saying Neil Magny is one of the most underrated fighters in the history of the UFC. I shouldn't say underrated, underappreciated.
That's fair.
Neil Magny's really good.
He is
fun and smart, and I hate to think that, and I get it. If I was the president of the UFC, I'd be rooting for Rakhmonov to beat Neil Magny. But I hate to think that there's people like rooting against Neil Magny.
Especially because
company guy
and
ultimate
nobody
fighter,
nobody wanted this fight.
Yeah, he's the guy. He was guy calling for Chimaev when nobody wanted to fight him, and he'll fight him. He's just that guy.
Okay, so if Magny beats Rachmanov, obviously he's out of the little.
And then he's third. Now he's number 3.
But in
He's
like
not
in a
even
win, if he has
yeah.
if he has a hard enough time in a win here, could you see kind of in your mind moving Brady into that second spot?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But Brady struggled with. I mean, he struggled late with Michael Chiesa. Like not early. He was dominating Michael Chiesa in the grappling of all things.
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of gassed out. He's a big, bulky, very large muscle guy. Kind of big first, really big fight. Kind of gassed a little bit.
Sure.
But yeah, if in a win, I don't know if he falls behind Sean Brady, but he probably falls to the same tier.
All right.
You know,
last question before okay, so you've got that visualization in front of you. You got Brady, Rachmanov, Chimaev. Drop Jack Della Maddalena in there somewhere. He has one loss, but he's won. But
I love
it's
that guy.
meaningless. He's won 12 in a row since, and he's knocking people out.
Yeah, I love that guy. I really do. The quality of wins for him is like, if Brady's number 3, the quality of wins is behind Brady right now. So he has to be 4. But God, I love that guy too. I love his style. I love his personality. I love everything about him.
Yep. Agreed. All right, man.
His team. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, what a fucking good division this is too.
And
you got me swearing more than usual. That's how good the division is.
It's gotten a breath of fresh air with kind of this.
Didn't even think about it. Yeah. And it's probably somebody else we're not even thinking of.
I'm sure there is. All right, man. Lay this one out for me. Rachmanov is a 4-1 favorite right now. Like,
yeah, Neil Magny, how does
this fight play out?
Neil Magny should have. What was it coming back of Neil Magny?
Plus 310.
Yeah, Neil Magny. There's probably 2 or 3 guys in the like. Usman should be a 4-1 favorite against Neil Magny. Sure. Leon Edwards is fighting for the title. Should Leon Edwards be a 4-1 favorite against Neil Magny?
No, he shouldn't. He shouldn't. No. And like if anything, I'd put Colby Covington at longer odds on top of Neil Magny just because of the style.
But
matchup.
Do you put Colby Covington at -400 against Neil Magny?
No, I don't.
No, neither do I. That's my point. Like, other than probably Usman, I don't put anybody that high because, that wasn't taking a shot. That wasn't taking a shot at Colby.
Honestly.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe Chimaev, but that wasn't taking shots at Colby. It wasn't taking shots at Leon Edwards. Those guys are fantastic. Like, they're as good as they come. You know, hell, in the Sherdog rankings, I've been the one who's been pumped. I've been one calling for Kobe to be on the rankings for pound, like, 14th, 15th kind of spot. Man, Neil Magny he's one of these guys. He's just my kind of guy. You know, the kind of guys I like, the guys that are just overachievers. I just love these guys. The guys you always count out. He fights at this insane pace. I don't know if he's the president of the Insane Pace Club, but he's in the club. Like, that's for sure, for his output. He's a fighter who cardio is a tool. And not only is it a tool for him, it's his best weapon. He's the ultimate, like, gamer. He will start off at this normal pace, and he just builds and builds. And by the 3rd round, and you guys, I know if someone hasn't heard me talk about building before, I'm talking about building as just someone who, like, the output rises each round and gets more. Every minute goes down, they can become more effective and more output. He's a guy that, like, he'll start off normal in the 1st round, and by the 3rd round, he's like in a full sprint. He's this long and lengthy fighter who it's funny. I'm not sure what you're going to get with his long and his length between each fight, because one fight he wants to be on the outside, throwing straight jabs, long type strikes, jab, a little short no tell jab, teep kicks, calf kicks. I mean, go back to, like, the Anthony Rocco Martin. He was beating up Rocco Martin with a calf kick. That's a fight where he broke a guy with his output for a guy who, like, Rocco Martin was doing well, and Magny just broke him with it. Then, like, then another fight, you'll see him. He'll be using that length to take these, like, giant steps where he's just so long. You take these steps, you can close the distance in no time. And he wants to be in the clinch. He wants to battle. He wants to grind in there where he can kind of use his cardio advantage inside, where he's throwing step-in knees inside and landing close quarter strikes and elbows and knees and shoulder strikes and all like just little like annoying things that he can do. He's one of the most underrated offensive wrestlers of all time. He reminds me of like Belal Muhammad, and what I mean by that is in like the accolades. Like these guys don't have these great wrestling accolades, but in so many matches they're able to get on top and win. Now, Magny struggles with better wrestlers defensively. Like RDA was one, Michael Chiesa, but like you cannot sleep on his grappling. He's just a well-rounded. Now, Rachmanov, he's 27. Like that's the first thing that jumps out at me. Like he's 27. He's probably just now entering his prime years. He's a very composed striker. He works behind a very crisp jab. He throws combinations. I love that he works the body to set up his power shots. He's got good power. He's also a big guy. Like he's a bigger guy. He does pull his head straight back. He kind of pulls a little bit. Not to the side, more straight back, which I'm a little worried about. But he's a strong wrestler. He's more of a like upper body, get to the body locks, kind of grind on you too, take you down. Good top control. He has 5 submission wins. He submitted Michel Pajes really quickly. That's a really, really good submission. So as far as prediction goes, I love this fight. I just love it. It's good matchmaking. I hate that Neil Magny has to be like this gatekeeper to the like the rising guys. You mentioned the Sean Brady's, Shemayas, but that's what these guys are, and that's kind of what Neil Magny has to be. And he's also the guy who's willing to do it. Like you never heard Neil Magny ever complain about matchmaking. He's always going to say yes. I think the line's way up. I don't think Magny should be that big of an underdog. However, I am taking Rachmanov. He's just so technically sound. He hits harder. He's younger. He's faster. He has the higher upside. I never have confidence picking against Magny because he's like we talked about. He's a perfect overcheeser. He's easily the guy that can ruin the hype of somebody because when Rachmanov it starts getting hard, has he been pushed there? Does he have the mental fortitude? We don't know that. We know Magny does. And when you take a step out of competition, is the self-doubt start creeping in. And all of a sudden, like I've landed all these power shots to put other guys out, and Magny's still in my face. Do I start doubting, like, oh man, maybe I wasn't ready for this type of level of guy? That's what Neil Magny can do to somebody. I'm not picking that. I don't want to go beyond the skill set. So I'm taking Rachmanov by decision. But as far as betting, I'm not touching this.
Yeah, I like a lot of what you put down there. It's instructive to me to look at the people that have beaten Neil Magny badly over the years. And it tends to be 2 types of people. Either people that are good enough offensive wrestlers and top position grapplers that they can just physically bully him around, Chiesa, RDA, or people that have such an advantage in speed on the feeds that they're able to just like tag him and hurt him over and over again, like Ponzinibbio and Larkin. Like those are basically the ways that you handle Neil Magny. The problem to me is that Rachmanov is probably both. Like he's
that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Like it's not just the people he's beaten in the UFC, but how he's done it. Because Alex Oliveira is generally not a dummy on the ground at all, and he's even at 170 is a physically just extremely strong individual. And the way that Rachmanov just ran over him so effortlessly, because I picked Oliveira in that fight because I always have, and if you're a veteran of this show, I have the wait and see about these ripped physical specimens coming out of Asia and the CIS. I'm like, let's wait until we see you under the bright lights of USADA once or twice. But no, he's kept all of his physical tools. Like in terms of just pure kind of physical horsepower and fast twitch athleticism, he is reminiscent of Khamzat Chimaev that way. Just the way he's kind of physically overpowering and overwhelming people that you're not used to seeing that from. I mean, Michel Prazeres is an undersized welterweight, but he is a physical fire plug and a legitimately great grappler. Like he is a great grappler. And Rachmanov took him down easily and just bullied him on the ground. And then against Harris, someone who is even taller, has longer reach, and is a fast twitch striker, just like thrashed him with a spinning kick, on the feet. Those are all things that do make me worry about Neil Magny in this fight. Because Magny he's good everywhere. You pointed out he's an extremely underrated offensive wrestler. You never look at like the tall, skinny guy and assume he's going to be much of a wrestler, but Magny always has been, at least in terms of offensive wrestling. But people who are much better than him in one area can sometimes kind of, overcome his well-roundedness. So much as it pains me to say it, because I'm as big a Neil Magny fan as you'll find, he was the coolest cat from really the last season of The Ultimate Fighter that I bothered watching. Like, I think this is going to be a level up moment for Rakhmonov. I think he's going to overwhelm Magny early in a way that we've only seen very elite fighters do, and that'll tell us something about Rakhmonov, that he is, in fact, a very elite fighter. If I had to pick one, and I do because that's what I'm here for, give me him to surprise Magny by lighting him up on the feet with some punches and maybe some body kicks that'll work against Magny's high guard, getting this thing to the ground, just surprising Magny with a level change, and then really overpowering him on the way to a submission. And I'm going to say it happens in the first round.
Wow, first round.
I'll add this. If it gets out of the first round, and certainly if it gets out of the second round, things get much more interesting. Shavkat Rakhmonov is not just 15-0. He's 15-0 with all finishes, and he's only ever even been to the third round once. Jesus. 14 of his 15 fights have ended within like 8 minutes. So if Magny gets a chance to start weaponizing his pace, it's on, but I'm not picking it to happen.
Yeah.
With that, we come to the main event of UFC Vegas 57, a lightweight matchup between Arman Tsarukyan and Mateusz Gamrot. Tsarukyan, 25-year-old Armenian by way of Russia, is 18-2 overall. He is 5-1 in the UFC. Entered with a certain amount of fanfare, but lost a unanimous decision to Islam Makhachev in his debut, and that was just over 3 years ago, back at UFC Fight Night, Overeem versus Oleinik. Since then, he's rattled.
Short notice too? Wasn't it short notice debut?
I don't remember, but it wouldn't surprise me. So short notice against Islam Makhachev.
I could be wrong on that.
As a 22-year-old, just the usual.
And it was a really close fight.
Mm-hmm. Since then, he's rattled off 5 straight over Olivier Aubin-Mercier, Davi Ramos, Matt Frivola, Christos Giagos, and most recently, back in February, Joel Alvarez, whom he punched out in the second round at UFC Fight Night Makhachev versus Green. Across the octagon from him will be Gamrot. The 31-year-old Pole is 20-1 with 1 no contest overall. He entered the UFC in October of 2020 with all kinds of hype, as he was a departing 2-division champ from KSW. He had won the lightweight title and defended it several times, and then won the vacant featherweight title, and then immediately abandoned both to sign with the UFC. He dropped a split decision to Guram Kutateladze in that debut. He's bounced back from that disappointment with 3 straight wins over Scott Holtzman, Jeremy Stevens, and Diego Ferreira. All 3 of them finishes. The most recent of those, the Ferreira fight, was a second-round TKO at UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Dawkins, where he just mauled him with a step-in knee to the liver. Ferreira went down and tapped the mat like he was done. So 2 guys that bounced back from disappointment in their UFC debuts and have looked all but invincible ever since. But in the eyes of the odds makers, one of them a little bit more invincible than the other, as Tsarukyan is a minus 240 favorite here, Gamrot plus 200 on the comeback. Keith, this is a high-level matchup between lightweights, either of whom, could be in the title picture a year from now. How do you see this playing out? What kind of upside do you see for the winner? And who wins?
Oh man, the upside is the sky's the limit. I'm all in on both these guys. Everything I said about Josh Parisian versus Baudot fight, like complete opposite of this fight. Like this is an incredible stylistic matchup. I just looked it up. It wasn't a short notice fight for Tsarukyan against Islam Makhachev, but it was a really close fight when he was 22 years old in his UFC debut in the co-main event of a card against a guy who a lot of people believe is the best 155-pounder on the planet. I'm not
Mhm.
saying he is, but like it's not
And
a bold statement.
and I think he was the last guy to take a round off Makhachev for like a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Gamrot, two-weight champ, who lost a split decision to Kutalazi, who's really good in a really fun, like absolute war of a fight. This fight it really is. I'm so glad they made it to main event. It would have sucked. It's so weird who the UFC's high on, who they're not high on, who gets main events, who doesn't. Like, if you told me these two guys matched up and it was on the prelims, like, would that have shocked you?
Nope.
Yeah.
Wouldn't shock me.
So I'm glad that they gave these guys respect. Tsarukyan is so good. He's an amazing athlete that is so slick on the feet, tight boxing, quick hands, great fluidity, great head movement, so good at slipping shots, but keeping himself in range to counter shot with accurate shots of his own. He throws hard body shots. He has KO power in both his hands. We saw that against Giagos. He'll toss in a spinning attack just because he has athleticism and fun. Hard calf kicks. He's a great wrestler. Great timing on his entries. Great reactionary double where if you pressure him, you can just drop under. Great at winning scrambles. He gets in the clinch. He's got some trips, foot sweeps. Um, he's hard to submit. I mean, I mentioned this before when we broke down film him. Davi Ramos is an Abu Dhabi champion, and he out-grappled Davi Ramos. You mentioned he won rounds against Islam Makhachev, and I didn't say a negative thing about him. Like my entire breakdown, I couldn't find a negative thing. And he's only 25 years old, so everything I said could make a jump and improvement. Like he might even be a better grappler than he was, his last fight, or more power, or fast to hit, whatever it is. Like he's at that age where you start making huge jumps and improvement. Gamrot, on the other hand, Gamrot is so well rounded. He's a southpaw who's a great athlete, technically sound, fast, accurate, long strikes down the pipe. Um, he he's really good at like changing stances in the middle of blitz, which gives him new angles. It's like one of the best strikers. He showed off power by starching Scott Holtzman, who's a really kind of underrated fighter, tough out for anybody. Um, he he was hurt a couple times by Kutalaze, but like also hurt Kutalaze back in a really fun fight. His grappling is off the charts. Great entries, so good at getting to the second level when he's driving, cutting an angle, smothering top control. He has 5 submission wins. I mean, like, look just how quick he submitted like Jeremy Stevens, like
Clowned
like
him.
with
Yeah.
ease. Um, he will go for leg locks, which is a little thing I hate, but he has great cardio. I mean, like, go back to like the Kutalazi fight. That was an absolute war, and he was going hard and winning the third round, in my opinion. As far as prediction goes, I love both of these guys. If you tell me the winner of this fight is the champion 2 years from now, like I won't doubt it one iota. Like 18 months from now, same thing. I'm all in on both guys. I think the odds are way off. I think this is an absolute war between two tacticians. I'm really intrigued by the southpaw of Gamrot versus Tsarukyan, who kind of can fight out of both stances. But like if Tsarukyan stays in the orthodox, how that changes the dynamic of the power shots between both of them, the body shots from both of them, the wrestling. Like I'm really intrigued by that little thing. Uh, Man, as far as a winner, man, I'm gonna go with Tsarukyan because he does hit harder. Like that's the one thing when I'm trying to separate these guys. I think he hits harder, but I think both these guys are gonna have moments. I think we're gonna have some back and forth on the feet, kicks, punches, in the clinch, in the grappling exchanges. I see like takedowns and switches, and I think we're just gonna watch two of the best guys in the division going at it, showing off unbelievably unmatched skill sets. Give me Tsarukyan by split decision, and in my opinion, the easy pick for fight of the night.
Yeah. I'm with you here. I'm all in on both of these guys. Even if Gamrot, as the older fighter and the one with I wouldn't say more fight experience. I think they both have about the same number of fights, but more high level fight experience. Even if he's more of the finished product and what we see is what we get, I see him as a guy that will stick around the UFC top 10 for several years to come. And if he wins on Saturday, might well win his way to a title shot within the next year. Whereas Tsarukyan, you point out he's so young. He was 22 when he debuted against Islam Makhachev. Just an incredibly difficult ask, and just the upside. The raw physical tools are incredible. The skill set is diverse and well-rounded, and he flows so effortlessly from one phase to the next. And those are things that, as he's 25 and growing towards 30, are only going to get better. You mentioned that he has power in both hands. Fighters' power gets better between 25 and 30 generally, especially if they have solid technique like he does. It gives me a little bit of pause that I believe this will be Tsarukyan's first time in a 5-round fight, where Gamrot has been into the championship round several times. He's undefeated in those fights, and that includes against some good people. Like, he's fought Norman Park twice in 5-round fights and beat him both times.
That's a great point.
If this goes past the middle of the second round and no man, or I mean, even if one man is ahead, but like Gamrot is looking fresher and more relaxed, that certainly we will have learned something there. But give me Tsarukyan in this fight to win in what I agree with you should be the fight of the night. It should be a wild fight in all three phases. Like, I look forward to the striking exchanges. I look forward to the scrambles. I look forward to actual exchanges on the ground where one guy is looking to advance position or work for a submission. Yeah, I want to see how these guys match up. Gamrot is a fantastic grappler, as you pointed out. I don't think he ever entered the main Abu Dhabi tournament in earnest, but I mean, he owned the Euro Abu Dhabi Combat Club for like a decade. I want to say he won it like 4 or 5 times. Like, wow. And it's a very good tournament in its own right. And yet I don't automatically think he's going to have the grappling advantage here. So I just can't wait to see. I'm leaning towards Tsarukyan to win by decision in a really, really fun fight. But whoever comes out of this with the win, it's going to be really, really well positioned in this division going forward. And it's by no means time to cut bait on whoever loses.
Well, when we do a matchmaking, I'm matching up with like a top 5 guy in the division.
Yeah, I agree. And I'd say Gamrot comes out and just plunks Tsarukyan in the first round. I still think Tsarukyan could be the champ in 2 or 3 years. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Likewise, if Tsarukyan just dominates Gamrot, I still think Gamrot's going to be a top 10 fighter in this division for another 3 years at least.
Would you, not that I expect the UFC to do this, but would you hate the winner of this fight facing Justin Gaethje next?
I would love that.
Yeah.
It'd be a fight of the year. It's a fight of the year contender.
Yeah, that's what they deserve.
Yeah. And no, the winner of this fight, assuming there's no controversy, needs somebody who's in the title picture, but not immediately in line for a shot. Someone like Gaethje.
That's what I thought of Gaethje. I originally thought of Chandler, but after a Chandler's knockout, probably not. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. That is it. 12 fights up, 12 fights down. This has been the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 38, Tsarukyan versus Gamrot. If this is your first time watching us, first of all, thank you. Hope you enjoyed it. We had a few more asides here than we usually do, but we always do bring a little bit of story time along with the analysis. And please do, like, subscribe, and make sure to check us next week. Comment for sure. Keith and I are both good about commenting back if you're watching this on YouTube. And definitely keep in mind that we do recaps of all these events 10 to 15 minutes after the main event of this card. We will be live on the Sherdog YouTube page, breaking down all these fights. We will start from the top fight and work our way to the bottom, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was controversial, what's next for the winners as well as the losers, hand out some awards. But most importantly for you, the live chat is open during that time. So we are taking your questions, your comments, your hot takes. We have quite a few regulars there that really, really do contribute to the conversation, and we would love to see you join them. Between now and then, thank you once again for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week, and definitely enjoy the fights.